Welcome to Selling in the Age of AI.
Yeah, this is good stuff. So,
Must-listen podcast for sales professionals who lean into technology without leaning on it. Dive into the future of sales with your hosts, the dynamic and inspiring Frank Somma, renowned keynote speaker, best-selling author, seminar leader, and business coach. Get ready for game-changing insights and strategies that value technology but place humanity at the top of the sales pyramid.
Benvenuti a tutti. Welcome everyone to Selling in the Age of AI, the podcast where we respect the tech but place human-to-human contact squarely at the top of the sales pyramid. I'm Frank Somma, and today I have to say I'm a bit starstruck. I have followed and been a fan of our guest today for the past few years. I have to admit that when I finally got the nerve to invite him on, I was giddy with excitement when you said yes. Neil Gordon is a persuasion expert and the best-selling author of The Most Powerful Sentence of All Time. That's the name of his book, The Most Powerful Sentence of All Time. He is a former editor of Dutton, where he worked with New York Times best-selling authors like Eckhart Tolle. He has been featured in Forbes, Fortune, Inc., and Entrepreneur. I encourage you to go to his website and watch his opening video. In that short 46-second message, Neil delivers a masterclass of persuasion. I mean that. He's that good. Welcome, Neil. I am so stoked to have you on and have a conversation with you today. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Frankie. What a lovely welcome.
So, on this podcast, most of our audience is salespeople, entrepreneurs, leaders. And, we were talking a bit before about the prompts in AI and augmentation versus replacement. What's your 40,000-foot view of this new technology and where it fits for us these days?
I admit that I look at the large language model, AI revolution with ChatGPT and Claude and all of that. I look at that through a fairly biased lens, in that my work for many, many years since my Penguin days has been on content. It's been on creating stuff that's meant to influence others.
Okay.
What I consider in terms of this technology through that lens is that it's a unique opportunity for people who don't fancy themselves to be writers per se,
Okay.
to put something on the page that's a workable draft, which then gives them an opportunity to write it and refine it using their skills and their expertise, et cetera, et cetera. And so I see it through my experience as being an opportunity for powerful augmentation of one's skills, strengths, expertise, whatever it might be. When we move out beyond that, when we think about it in the broader sense, it's kind of a little from column A, column B, and column C, Frank, because in some cases there are analogous situations where it's a great way to augment. In other ways, it will replace certain functions and roles.
Sure.
And we're seeing people's livelihoods being greatly affected by that.
Mm-hmm.
And there are other things that, to me at least, AI is just creating more noise, and it's just creating more of a distraction from solving for the things that need to be solved for. Like, I wouldn't want an AI therapist. Right. I know that kind of thing is emerging as a technology.
Yeah.
I don't want it for myself. If I'm going to actually process things with, like, outwardly, externally, I want it to be with another living, breathing person. That's me, of course, but I think that there's going to be a variety of ways that we relate to this technology depending on the specific situations we're in.
I'm just putting a couple of notes down because, boy, we had a few things to talk about there.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, right? I don't want AI to be my therapist, but I do love the idea that AI can be better at diagnostics than a human being. So, I don't want you to be my oncologist necessarily, but I do want my oncologist to utilize AI to make sure you're getting to the exact root of my problem, right?
That's right. That's an augmentation model. And
Exactly.
I fully favor an oncologist utilizing every resource they can to be more effective at their job.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. So what keeps folks from, or could you tell even, so wholesale replacement of my, if I have to um, write something for a job or whatever, why isn't AI just the ultimate answer? And with your experience, do you think when you read through something that's AI generated, is there a difference to you than from a human? Like, is there anything obvious that you would find?
I do believe there's a difference, Frank. What I find to be interesting is the nuance that ultimately winds up emerging in discerning that difference.
Okay.
What I recently did, and I admittedly resisted it for a little while. I didn't just get in. I was not the early adopter. I was more early majority probably when it came to using an LLM platform for the kind of work that I do. What I started doing was creating prompts using these platforms that you plug into these platforms so that you could write a TED-like talk or a full keynote
Okay.
or curate stories from your life that you can incorporate into your content. These are all things that I've been doing for years, but it's just actively utilizing this new technology as a way to make that happen. And what I found, and this is a common objection among my audience who are primarily public speakers, as well as authors and other thought leader type people, is that they found that AI doesn't really sound like them. It just sounds like this kind of generic, insubstantial kind of writer. And I would say I agree with that. But what I got curious about is why? Why would it sound like that? And I started actually asking ChatGPT to help me to understand how these platforms come to create the content that they do.
Mm-hmm.
And some of this I had inferred or learned earlier, but in this more precise way, I learned a new term called schema drift.
Don't know it.
Schema drift, and I hope our listeners will forgive me if I don't quite get this 100% technically right, but my understanding of it is that because AI is based on everything that preceded it, it's an aggregation of scores and scores and scores of data.
Right.
And because the technology has emerged as being as immediately helpful to people as possible, they want a synopsis of a paper. They want to break down or summarize something that's very complex and unwieldy into something that's much more accessible.
Sure.
It's basically been trained and has drawn from data that supports this training to be as immediately helpful as possible.
Okay.
To be as clear and supportive and positive even to a fault.
Right.
And I'm sure we've all experienced that, where the platform was just very supportive and encouraging, even if a more neutral response might have been more appropriate.
Okay.
My point is, the schema drift happens when it takes anything that we put into it and it starts to steer it toward this more immediately helpful and very clear upfront kind of content. But as a result of that, it loses something that's very important in what I encourage people to do in a persuasive piece of content, like a talk or an article or a speech or a book or whatever it is. They're ironing out all of the tension.
That's a
Big
great
thing.
phrase. Explain it, please.
Yeah, of course, of course. What I observed many years ago is that some of the most effective speakers and some of the most effective authors are not giving the game away right away. They are consciously and deliberately using dramatic tension as a way to draw the reader or the audience member in.
100%.
And then gradually and strategically lead them to a certain point so that there's maximum, not just understanding, but integration of embracing, of being empowered by whatever is said.
Okay.
So when people talk about AI making you sound like everyone else, my assessment is that that's a result of schema drift, and schema drift is turning everything into something that's immediately helpful for as many people as possible. But the most effective and persuasive content I've ever seen, and what I teach my clients and followers to utilize, is to deliberately hold off on being helpful in favor of drawing them in and getting them emotionally invested in being part of whatever's being shared. And when you do that, that's when you don't just get clarity, you also get an emotional investment in creating change.
Neil, that's so well said, and that
Thank you.
makes a ton of sense because it's it is the difference between the designer coming to your home and creating a beautiful color scheme and every public institution with beige walls.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I mean,
It's
it's
well
kind of,
painted, it's internally consistent,
yeah,
and
and it's fine,
completely doesn't inspire you at all.
and it's fine,
It's fine.
right? But it's only
That's right.
fine. Yeah,
It's
I
only
get that.
fine.
I get that.
Yeah.
So I think part of making AI work for me then, because like I wonder why wouldn't somebody go into ChatGPT and say, I'm very interested in why people don't trust one another after COVID. Can you write me 20,000 words on that and then submit it to a publisher as your book? Like, is that happening now and I'm just naive? What do you
I
think?
would say that people have certainly attempted it.
Hmm.
And whether they would give a name to it or even be able to explain why it was happening, I don't know. But I do believe that most publishers see what they're doing. If they are going ahead with that kind of thing,
Yeah.
I imagine they're sussing it out and realizing, oh, there's nothing beneath the surface of
I mean,
this.
by definition, if the large language models are drawing on all the data that exists, by
Yeah.
virtue of that, it is plagiarism, right? To do what I just said,
I would say that, yes, Frank, I would say it's plagiarism,
right?
and perhaps even more significant to our conversation. It's, well, not more, excuse me, as significant to our
Hmm.
conversation. It's just an extension of what's already been said. So by its very nature, it's not going to move the needle forward in any way at all.
Yeah, it's inauthentic, and that's an important thing. As and interesting because we were talking, with our sales audience, is I get folks. One of the reasons we began the podcast is because I had so many people worried, saying, when AI comes out, I'm not going to have a job anymore. Bots are going to take over all selling function, and it's proven to not be that. And I see the world changing. The analogy I'd like to offer is that when back in early America, right, when my parents were growing up, there was a butcher and a baker that made bread, and the poultry person might have been different, but every
Mm-hmm.
specialty store, right, and then supermarkets happened, and all of those little merchants went out of business,
Right.
and everybody could just embrace these huge supermarkets. And what I see now is butcher shops and bakeries coming back all over the place and
Yeah.
thriving because there is that, yes, can I buy 100 pounds of meat for $1.65 at Costco? Sure. But when I go to the local butcher, I feel like I'm getting better quality. I'm asking questions and getting answers. I'm getting instructions sometimes. So then it's, if you don't want to be commoditized, you've got to be able to shepherd people through the process and bring some expertise that is human to human. And that's
Yeah.
what I'm feeling like the message I want to give to entrepreneurs and salespeople is embrace the technology that's out there and use it. And as long as you continue to differentiate yourself and keep that human component and bring your expertise, which is human and nuanced, I don't think you're going to be replaced.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a give and take, I would say, in that there's a, a need for the person to prioritize the quality and the cost that comes with that. When we think about the difference in cost between a huge piece of meat at Costco
Mm-hmm.
and something that's grass fed, organic,
Right.
organic grass fed, like as sustainable and ecologically friendly of a piece of beef as is possible these days, there's going to be a significant cost differential,
Yeah, but
and a person
I'm going to interrupt
will
you
need to
because
do that.
that's the person that wants the other one. That's not my client.
Oh
You know
no,
what
I get that.
and that's what I
I'm
want to
not
encourage
arguing
people,
the that.
right?
Yeah,
But that's what we
yeah,
want to encourage. Yes, that's going to exist. And yes, a lot of people who compete on price today are going to be replaced by that supermarket model
Right.
because you've commoditized yourself already if you compete on price, haven't you?
That's right. That's exactly the definition of commoditizing one's offers, is that the only way you can do it is compete on price
Right.
rather than the unique value you're bringing to
Okay.
the consumer.
Right. Right. So that makes a lot of sense. We were
Yeah.
talking earlier a little bit about using AI and prompts. What have you learned? What can you share with us about how to construct? I was talking to Sam Richter. I don't know if you know Sam.
I don't know, Sam. No.
Somebody that I would love to introduce you to.
Yeah.
I'll send you his website. But brilliant, brilliant guy. And we were talking about how to prompt and what you get out of AI. So what have you learned about how to use this tool and the kind of how to craft prompts?
The breakthrough that I had a few months ago, and this might not be revelatory for a lot of folks, but it was certainly for me, is that because of how I lived for the first, however, 40 some odd years of being in this world prior to these platforms coming out, I always took it upon myself. I thought I had to take it upon myself to solve for everything in order to move forward. And even using a platform like ChatGPT, I thought that I needed to figure everything out and know exactly what to feed into it
Okay.
in order to get out what I needed. But the breakthrough happened when I realized I can start with expressing what I want to do
Okay.
and then asking it, what do you recommend we do first in order to make this happen? And even just this morning, because right now I'm building out my most ambitious, it's not technically a prompt, it's a series of 5 prompts
Okay.
that are all meant to work in accordance with one another in helping someone to put together the first draft of a compelling how-to book.
Okay.
I've created programs already on writing speeches and talks and all of that. This is about something much more ambitious, which is why it's, of course, not just one prompt, but a series of them.
Yeah.
And it had given me earlier in our chat, like a couple of days ago, it gave me a labeling system and how to label the documents that we're going to supplement any, like I was uploading existing templates from a program I already have around how to write a book, but this is going to take the same structure and system and incorporate and have it driven by the platform as opposed to one's own writing.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't remember what the labeling system was. And I started looking for, I was like, and I had to remind myself again, let me just ask. And I said, all right, earlier you used this system for that. Can you remind me of what these labels are? And it just, in a few seconds, it did it.
Amazing.
And it's, again, Frank, it's probably kind of like a, well, duh, of course it can do that. But I need to train myself fundamentally to remember it is there for me. And perhaps most significant for me with my eagerness to please and what psychologically would probably be considered a bit of an anxious attachment disorder, it's not going to get mad at me for not remembering. It's not going to give me a hard time. It's just going to, of course, here you go.
Right.
And it's
Right.
amazing.
That's wow. Those
So
are
asking the platform for help
on how to ask the platform.
in doing the thing makes it collaborative as opposed to I have to
Unbelievable.
do this all myself.
Wow, that's that is revelatory. It's not something that most of us would think of. So, Neil, I
Yeah.
really like that.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit. I want to understand a little bit about your book because
Mm.
like I said, I've admired your work so much. In the emails that I get, I subscribe to, and I get so much cool information. And you just have a way of presenting that's so easy to consume that I look forward to. Like we all get these billions of emails, and I'm constantly but
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
you. I want to read what you have to say all the time. So your book, the title of your book, Neil, has a heck of a claim. Let's start
Mm.
there.
Okay. The most powerful sentence of all time.
Wow. Wait, cue the music. Okay,
Yeah,
go.
exactly. Exactly. What I detected many years ago, Frank, what I came to understand was that there was a pattern that dates back at least 2,500 years. And this pattern is so profoundly simple that, as far as I can tell, it's consistently and repeatedly been overlooked by any number of experts or institutions or whomever. I remember I very briefly went through a phase of maybe trying to go to grad school and studying it formally. And when I asked some of these grad programs about how would I go about creating a terminal degree program around this thing, they're kind of mystified by why I would even want to do it. And these are communication studies departments.
Okay.
What I came to understand is that when we look at some of the most ancient quotes by top thinkers like Socrates and Plato and Aristotle, Sun Tzu, and other people from that era, is that there is a certain kind of sentence that shows up again and again when you look on Goodreads, and it shows you the most popular quotes by any given person.
Yeah.
At least half, if not more than half the time, the top most voted quote is a sentence like this. When you open a book on your Kindle, like a nonfiction book, and Kindles aggregate all of the highlights of any given passage.
Sure.
When you look at the most highlighted passage in the book, it is almost always this kind of sentence. And when you look at the most popular TED speakers of all time, they either have this exact kind of sentence or maybe a couple of sentences that together make up the same basic essence of it.
Mm-hmm.
Again and again, in these persuasive situations where the author of the content is meant to persuade others of an idea, we see this one model, this one kind of thing. And personally, when I've utilized this tool, I've done a very good job of persuading people to take me up on a program, or to, in the book itself, I use the technique in the book itself, of course. And I was pleasantly surprised that even though I'm at the very beginning of this, the history of selling this book, I still sold enough copies where it's aggregated the highlights. And you can even see it on the Amazon page now. Now they put the most highlighted passages on the page of the book that where it's sold. And you can see that like 79 people have highlighted this thing. And it's this kind of sentence. So again and again and again, we see that there's quantifiable evidence that this sentence has a greater impact on people than other kinds of sentences.
Wow. See how wonderfully you just did that. First of all, especially for our newer salespeople that are listening, and this is, I can promise you, this is natural to Neil and a way that he's learned to communicate and not contrived one bit. But I'm going to tell you that he has used my name a half a dozen times in the short time that we're talking. And it's just, no, Neil, it's something that people don't understand is part of persuasive communication. And it's just something that is part of you. You know, you're not going, oh, let me remember to call Frank. You know, it's this idea like when you're driving your car and a squirrel jumps out in the road, you don't say, gee, let me lift my foot off of the gas and place it on the brake pedal and stop the vehicle so I don't hit the squirrel. You just do it. And I think great communication needs to be like that. And I just wanted to point that out. So in addition to that, you just had me completely emotionally invested in what you're talking about. You know, as we went through that, the way that you described it made it something that desirable. So I was persuaded to buy your book just by virtue of our 2 minutes of conversation.
That's great. And it's interesting that, as we both know, persuasion falls, let me put it this way. One time I was meeting with a client and some of his friends who are all based here in the city. He was visiting the city and they were all here. And so we all met, and they hadn't met me before. And so they asked, what is it you do? And I said that I was a persuasion expert. And one of them was like, well, what are you going to teach us that Robert Cialdini and Chris Voss haven't already taught us, the authors of Influence and Never Split the Difference, right? And what I explained to them was, this is just a matter of being another tool in the persuasion tool belt.
Right.
In the way that you just commented on my using your name, using a person's name, if you're in a sales conversation and you use the name, then it winds up creating a more authentic, more meaningful connection. It's a tool in the tool belt, as is the various things that Cialdini talks about in his book, the likability, the social proof, whatever it might be. And then, of course, the various things that Voss talks about in Never Split the Difference, like getting someone who's on an opposing side of a conversation to say, that's right. Not you're right, but that's right. Because it's not a me against you in that point. It's like we both agreed on this thing. Anyway, these are all just tools.
Right.
And I'm not claiming to be the definitive authority on persuasion. I'm claiming that if you're not using this specific tool, then you're missing an opportunity to be more persuasive.
Super interesting. How do you feel about, I'm going off on a tangent here a little bit, but
No
there
worries.
are people who feel as though when you're conscious, like I'm an NLP grad, and I spend a lot of time studying and learning the most effective way. And I have this tenet in NLP that we say you are responsible for the result of your communication. So that there isn't any he misunderstood me, that's not what I meant, she got me wrong. It's on me. And that makes sense to me, because if I have a point to make, why would I worry about interpretation? Wouldn't I rather try it this way, this way, this way, this way, this way, since I'm the one that wants to make the point? Right now, my dog wants to make the point.
Yeah,
So
he's making a good point.
understanding these things, sometimes people say, well, isn't that not authentic? And aren't you manipulating? So how does manipulating work versus persuading?
I won't claim credit for being I won't try that again.
Sorry. They'll cut that part and we'll start again. Go ahead.
Yeah, of course. I don't claim to be the originator of this concept, but I have heard it and I have liked it and appreciated it. That manipulation is about getting somebody to do something that's serving you, it's in your interests, whereas persuasion is about convincing somebody to do something that's in their interests.
Okay, so then I push back and I say, but you're a professional salesperson. You're selling your programs, your book, your coaching, your seminar, whatever it is. And when you're persuading me, it's self-serving by nature.
There's certainly truth to how any of us who are selling something are going to benefit from being successful at that goal.
Right.
And if there is value in what's being sold, if one fundamentally believes that what they're going to offer, what they're offering is going to help the person who consumes that which is offered to live a better life in some respect, and somehow their life is going to be better, then it's going to serve us, but it's also going to serve them. Now, I'll say that I want to be clear, Frank, that I don't have crystal clarity on everything that a person in my position, for example, I sell information products, I sell this book, I sell my services. I'm not 100% in alignment with best practices for myself at this stage of my life. And what I mean by that is I've utilized scarcity in helping to convert people. A couple of years ago, I was doing things that in the end, I just didn't like at all. And so I stopped doing them. There was fake scarcity, like digital scarcity, where there would be some sort of countdown timer on the website and they would only have a day or whatever to get the thing. But there was nothing stopping them from honestly getting it a day after that deadline was over. It was arbitrary. They're not getting live access to me. It's not anything like that. And I put that aside because I just didn't like it. It felt like a lie.
Yeah.
Even though I do believe in what I offer, even though I do believe what I have is going to be of value to others. So it checked off the box of being in that more persuasion category because it is going to serve their best interests.
Mm-hmm.
But I was doing something that to me compromised my values, and I stopped doing it. So I don't mean to sit here and say that there's no gray area or ambiguity to this discussion or this issue. And I'm going to give myself some grace in doing the best I can to marry the good intentions I have to offer something of real value to others
Mm-hmm.
with the nature of humans. And sometimes they might need a little bit of a push just to get them out of their own way. And it's tricky. And I'm not 100% clear on the best way forward.
No, I thought that was beautifully said. And the two things out of that, to me, that come out are, I could also argue that many people are procrastinators. And I know
Mm-hmm.
a lot of folks I grew up with that had their first heart attack before they started eating right and exercising.
Sure.
So sometimes, for your own good, I have to put the countdown timer because you'll continue to procrastinate. So it's okay to implement some of the tools as long as I think the underlying part of it has to be, and salespeople, if you just started 10 minutes ago or if you've been in the job for, 100 years, you have to believe that you are the best solution for your client.
Mm.
And or that you'll provide. Like if I found somebody that I thought needed Neil services the best, I would want to connect you. But that's what I'm coming in with, so that whatever techniques and tools I'm using, I understand that me is the difference.
Mm.
And that's going to be the separator. So even when you have the countdown thing, what you're bringing underneath that is something that, as you said, you absolutely believe those folks need.
I don't know if you know anyone who's did this when they were in college, but when I was in college, I spent a summer attempting to sell Cutco knives.
Oh yes, I bought Cutco knives.
You bought Cutco knives,
Of
yeah.
course. It's my
And it's
daughter's
funny.
friend. I had to buy something from the kid.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. And honestly, Frank, I think about 90% of what I sold that summer was just because somebody felt bad for me or something. So I wasn't a good salesperson in that context. And a client of mine who I'm in a retainer with, and when I have a retainer with someone and they've made a sizable investment, I include a VIP day. I'll go to them.
Okay.
And someone asked, well, why do you need to go to them? Aren't you supposed to have people come to you for a VIP day? I was like, when I go to them, I get information about them that I wouldn't get otherwise. And there's a great deal of nuance to be mined from that. And the nuance is what ultimately really gets someone, let's say they're giving a talk, to really, it's the difference between people liking the talk and getting a standing ovation and a line of people wanting to connect with you afterwards. And I went to his kitchen and he had this great big set of Cutco knives. And it was because his son apparently had tried it.
Okay.
And we had that to connect on and talk about. But the upshot of all of that is that I was thinking a lot very recently about my life as a Cutco salesperson.
Okay.
I still used the Cutco knives I got in the summer of 97. I mean, that is almost 30 years ago now. And I'm still using these same exact knives. And I've gotten them sharpened a couple of times. And I love these knives. I was not a good salesperson in 97, but I would actually probably be a pretty good salesperson for Cutco today because I'm such a great case study for how valuable these are and how much value they've added to my life. I would believe in the product so much more now than I did 30 years ago.
Right.
And if a person is young and new to their company and they're selling a product or service that they're not that familiar with, I honestly feel the best thing they could do is get as familiar as possible and get as immersed as possible, because that will help the belief in the value.
Mm-hmm.
And that belief is going to, no matter what tools are in your persuasion belt, that belief is going to be perhaps the most powerful thing you can do to convince others to convert.
Absolutely. And I think on top of that, you got to believe in you.
Yeah.
I don't know how it would work in the Cutco scenario because you're in college and you're doing that temporarily for a summer.
That's right.
But folks that are in career sales, whether they're selling MRI machines or financial services or whatever,
Or a SaaS
widgets,
platform. Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't matter what you. I strongly feel you've got to believe that you are delivering the best experience because things are going to go wrong. There are products that are going to come out that may be better. There
Mhm.
are whatever's going to happen. I have to feel confidently that when you have Frank Somma as your salesperson, I got you. No
Yeah.
matter what, I've got you. I've got the case
Yeah.
studies. I've fit it right. I've paid attention, and I do that better than anybody else who sells what I sell. And I
Yeah.
have to believe that walking in.
Hmm.
I think that's what's
Absolutely.
sellable. So the old adage: you sell yourself, then you sell your company, then you sell your product. That I think that the idea that in today's day and age, with I mean, I think I can buy a car now on Amazon, right? Doesn't Isn't Hyundai on Amazon? I think I can point and click and buy a car or a
I don't
scooter.
know about, I haven't seen that. I have seen a video of someone buying a house on
All right,
Amazon.
right. So if I can point and click my way to buy damn near anything,
Yeah.
and I want you to buy from me has to be the difference,
Yeah.
right? That's what we have
That's
to
right.
bring.
That's right.
Um, so Neil, where do you want folks to go to learn more about you? Actually, before we go, I do want to ask you because I ask everybody any charity that you'd like to shout out that you've had experience with. Who do you give to? Who do you work with?
I give to several. What I would like to I give to several. What I would like to encourage people to do is support Feeding America, because food insecurity in this country is just, it's one thing to fight extreme poverty around the world. There is no reason why anyone in the United States needs to be food insecure. And that's really what I want us to do, is just for us to all have full bellies, because that will lead to the kind of behavioral shift that I feel like we really need right now. So I think it starts with full bellies, and that's very much what I want to support.
And you're right, there is no reason for it.
That's
If
right.
we focus on it, it really shouldn't happen. So we're going to buy your book. And
Yeah.
then where do you want us to do? Where do you want us to find you? On LinkedIn? I mean, we'll put all the links in the show notes, but where do you steer folks to find out more about you and your services?
Honestly, I don't know if our audience is going to be into it, but I feel like the best place to go through the kind of stuff that I offer is my TikTok profile,
Okay.
where I certainly have the largest following and my videos do the best. However, it also just becomes the longest. You could spend hours on a binge of my stuff if you really wanted to.
Wow.
And that just becomes a really good place to do it. But my handles on various socials are either Neil Can Help, or on Instagram in particular, it's neil.can.help. Any of those can work, but I would say TikTok is your best bet.
Fantastic. This has been an absolute pleasure for me. I feel like I learned. I can't wait to continue down all those rabbit holes and look at all your content because you never disappoint. And I mean that. I don't need to flatter you because you're on the show. I just wouldn't say anything. But I mean that. Everything I've ever seen from you has been compelling, interesting, and I want to read it to the last drop all the time or watch it to the last.
I appreciate that, Frank.
Really
It's
good
very
stuff.
kind of you to say.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. Thank you so much. Everybody get out and get Neil's book and find him on TikTok. And without anything further, I'll say thank you, Neil, and farewell.
All right. Thanks very much as well, Frank.
All right.
Ready to take your sales team or event to the next level? Visit franksoma.com to discover how Frank can coach your top performers, deliver a tailored workshop for your team, or captivate your audience with a content-packed keynote at your next event. Frank's best-selling book, B2B is really P2P, is now available on Amazon and Frank's website. Here's a special offer. As a valued listener, mention this podcast when you contact Frank and receive a 10% discount on your first coaching session, keynote, or workshop booking.
That's a wrap. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Selling in the Age of AI. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to all of the topics we discussed, and of course, to connect with our amazing guests. I have to shout out big love to my production team, Neeks, Angelo, Nico of Digital Presence. You guys rock. If you want your digital presence to explode, check these guys out at digitalpresence.team. And until next time, remember, people can't point and click you. Be the difference maker for your prospects and clients.